Today we've got another race recap video. Yes, I'm talking all about my experience racing Challenge Wales Middle Distance Triathlon for the first time ever. Let's jump in. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Josh, triathlete based here in London, and on this channel we talk all things triathlon, whether that be product reviews or race recaps just like this one. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, please consider subscribing to the channel. Like I said, this was my first time doing the middle distance race at Challenge Wales, and I didn't feel that great about my chances of having a good race beforehand. For those of you who watched my Nottingham half recap video, I had a pretty rough race there, and I came into that feeling really good about my chances to do better than last year, and unfortunately that didn't happen. And having had some illness and having taken 10 days off due to back pain, I was really not feeling confident about my chances of doing well, or my chances of just finishing the run section specifically due to that back pain. I was still really excited to do the race because generally I'm always excited to race, and I knew quite a lot of people doing the race, so it was a chance for me to catch up with some of them and to race alongside some people that I haven't necessarily raced alongside before. So I was still kind of prepared to make the journey and to try and give it my all. I just knew that it was going to be tough in some parts. For those of you who don't know, Challenge Wales typically starts quite a lot later than other triathlons. This year it started for me at 10 AM compared to 6 or 7 AM for most other races. Now this is mainly due to the tides, but honestly I really enjoyed the later start. I was able to get up at a relatively normal time, have a normal breakfast about 2.5 hours before racing, and get down to the race start with plenty of time. And this left me tons of time and really removed a lot of the stress, which again, if you watch that Nottingham video, you'll know is probably the exact opposite of my experience there. But this time, very little stress, able to get there with tons of time. We were able to register the morning of the race, rack my bike the morning of, get everything ready, get down to the start with plenty of time, wetsuit on, and in a mediocre position simply because it was quite compact and quite busy around the start in Wales. So let's talk about the race itself, and obviously we'll start with the swim, and it's worth talking about the course for the swim. Now that's something I wouldn't normally do, but again, another first for me was that this was my first time doing an Aussie exit swim. Yeah, the course at Wales is 2 laps with a kind of a short run up a ramp to get out of the water, a short run along the kind of pier front, and then again running back down the same way you came into the water, down another ramp to start the second lap. I didn't really know how I was going to feel while doing an Aussie exit because it was my first one, and I talked to some friends who have done them before. My plan was really to take the run in between the first and second lap pretty relaxed. The last thing I wanted to do, as not the best runner in the world, was absolutely gas myself and really have a poor second lap of the swim. So it was a relatively easy jog between lap 1 and lap 2 for me. So diving into the water was a bit of a shock because I knew that the water was going to be cold, and I actually made the decision not to acclimatise before, simply because there was going to be a 15 or so minute break between acclimatisation and race start. And I didn't want to be freezing cold on the start line just waiting for it to go. So it was my first time jumping in the really cold water, and it was freezing cold. It was definitely a bit of the shock, and it broke up my rhythm a lot in the first kind of couple of 100 meters, which meant that, you know, I'd already started a little bit further back from where I would have liked, and this put me even further back than that. So definitely a learning point. I think I'll probably try acclimatization in another race, but yeah, we'll just see. I think the most important thing is just getting a better position on the start line to be able to chase any front packs down. Because I was a bit further back compared to my swim ability, this meant I was doing a lot of overtaking, which in this case was both good and bad, I think. On the positive side, it is always motivating to be overtaking other people and to feel like you're making progress. However, it meant that I was often kind of slightly weaving. I wasn't taking the most direct line, going around people, not holding tight to boys and stuff. It just meant that first lap really was more strategic rather than just like swimming my own race. However, the congestion was significantly better on the second lap for me, and I was able to do a slightly faster second lap and really kind of put my head down and get going. In Wales, the run from the swim exit to transition is actually quite long. I think it's probably 600 or so meters, and luckily I had a spare pair of running shoes with me, so I left a pair of running shoes at the swim exit just on one side of the path, and I kind of whacked those on really quickly, and I felt significantly more comfortable and confident running along what is an A road there to get to transition, just because I didn't want to worry about not just hurting my feet, but maybe injuring them and having to take some time out because of that. Long-time viewers of the channel will know I am terrible at transitions. However, this time it was pretty much one of my best, I think, in T1. I got out onto the bike feeling pretty good overall. The Challenge Wales course is a 2-lap out and back, so roughly kind of 22-23 kilometers per kind of straight or length, you might call them, with around 1,000 meters of climbing over the whole 90k course. Now, that makes it not hilly specifically, but rolling. There's maybe 1 or 2 points on each lap, that you have to get out the saddle, and this was maybe a little bit worse for me, considering my front derailleur decided not to work on the morning of the race. It's since been fixed, but yeah, I didn't have a front derailleur, so my smallest gear was a 53/28, so I was definitely grinding up a few of the really steep climbs. But outside of those kind of really steep climbs, I was geared appropriately and I was feeling really strong on the bike. Actually, I didn't get any of the hip and lower back pain that I had in Nottingham. I was able to hold my aerial position really nicely and maintain a lot of speed up and over and then on the downhills of the rollers, and that put a lot of confidence in that I was keeping up with other people and also pulling away and overtaking some people. The last kind of 10k or so was a bit of the grind, mainly because I think I might have underfueled ever so slightly on the bike and maybe not eating a big enough breakfast. And I was like pretty ready to get off my bike by the time we got back into T2. So I was maybe not happy to see the run, considering how uncertain I was with my back and the problems and pain I've been having recently, but I was also pretty happy to be off the bike by that point. I took T2 pretty slow, actually. Although I was happy to get off the bike, I wasn't that thrilled to start running, just due to that back pain that I've mentioned about 1,200 times now. And unfortunately my back was pretty painful at the start of the run. It was just very tight, and it meant that I wasn't kind of like able to push the first of the 3 laps of running as much as I wanted, and it was definitely exacerbated by just how hilly the run course is at Wales. There were definitely some points on that first lap where I was walking the hills, and how steep they were specifically was pretty crazy, and that put a lot of stress on my lower back. However, for the second and third laps, my back definitely started to loosen up, and I actually got faster throughout the run, which is definitely not something I do very regularly. So that was really promising, and it meant coming down to the finish line, which is, I don't know, the last 1 to 1.5 k is all downhill. I felt good and positive and happy about my performance, and that's not something that I typically have. And even though I didn't come away winning my age group or even podiuming in my age group, I felt happy and satisfied, and like I got as much out of myself on the day as I could, and I've got no regrets leaving this race, and that's a really nice feeling to have, because anyone who's watching the other race recaps on this, I'm I'm someone who often focuses much more on the negatives, and so just to have a race where I'm pretty happy, there's a smile on my face as I cross the finish line, that feels really good. And I'm going to try and take some learnings away from this race around expectations and management and what I want to achieve, and the way I kind of think about goals and what success looks like for me, because it's probably the most fun I've ever had in a triathlon, and that's not just because of the kind of personal factors, but also for anyone considering it, I think Wales is an amazing course. The swim, bike and run is fabulous. There's so many people on the streets in Fishguard and some of the towns that you bike through, and the vibes are great. And a 10 a.m. start, especially for Danny coming with me to support me, is definitely well appreciated. And rather unexpectedly, considering the lead up to this race, I qualified for Challenge Champs by coming 5th in my age group, and that's really cool. I've never done a championship race, so I'm almost certain that I'll be going to Challenge Champs next year in the springtime, which is really exciting. So if you want to see my training for that race, my training for my next races coming up this year, still to announce, but getting closer and closer, so you'll definitely hear about those in the next video, and we'll probably look at the training that I have been doing and what's coming up. And if you want to see me do Challenge Champs next year and see whether or not that's a race worth signing up, I'd really appreciate if you like the video and subscribe to the channel. So that's it for this video. A rather positive ending to a race recap for a change. Look, thanks all so much for watching, and I hope your next training and racing goes just as well.